Welcome back to our Saving the California Dream special with series producer Heidi Cuda. California prides itself on being the leader in the environment, but we're also leading the country in environmental litigation, with more taxpayer money going to settle environmental lawsuits than any other state.
Attorney Karen Budd-Falen, a fifth-generation rancher, worked for years digging up these numbers you're about to hear, and she said it's putting a real strain on farmers.
Environmental litigation is big business. This is not a matter of protecting cute and fuzzy creatures. What we're doing now are putting real families out of business and jeopardizing America's energy supply and its food source. That's what you've got to realize. I think it is really important that people understand how much money is included in environmental lawsuits, and the fact that these environmental lawsuits are not to save species or save the environment. The lawsuits are over paperwork. Simply the federal government failure to do enough paperwork. So environmental groups can then sue the federal government over the failure to process paper. The federal government then pays them. In 1995, the federal government stopped accounting for any attorney's fees that were paid to environmental groups. And since then, we have found that the federal government is paying millions upon millions of dollars to these environmental groups. There's no accounting for any of the money. The way we found the money was going through federal court documents ourselves, and just in our office in Cheyenne, Wyoming, we found $36 million that had been paid to environmental groups from the federal government to continue suing the federal government. For that $36 million, not a single species was saved. Not one.
We spoke with the Center for Biological Diversity, an environmental nonprofit that's filed hundreds and hundreds of these lawsuits. Its legal director, John Buse, says conservative politicians and industry lobbyists have been attacking environmental groups for suing the government too much. But a recent study clearly shows that business interests actually file the most lawsuits against the EPA. The right wing's deafening silence when it comes to polluters' lawsuits betrays its true agenda. It's not really about litigation. It's just about litigation to protect our air, water, environment, just being against that litigation.
All right, well, we have with us Dan Keppen, the executive director of the Family Farm Alliance, who flew in from Oregon tonight to be here with us. We appreciate you coming all the way down here. Now, how do you respond to that statement?
Well, I think it's interesting. First of all, my organization, which is very much against this sort of litigation, which harms the rural communities of the members that I represent that live in, it's just incorrect to say that Republicans is some sort of a political position, because the president of my organization is a Democrat, for instance. We're more concerned about the litigation that's being used, the tactics that are being used to really not even save species. We're for voluntary, sort of collaborative, incentive-driven types of conservation programs. And in fact, my organization is on record for supporting Farm Bill conservation programs with other mainstream environmental groups like the Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited. So that's just really inaccurate and unfair.
Well, a lot of the people I talk to, the farmers, are environmentalists, so I think it's interesting. And you work with environmental groups. You know, I've talked to you before, you're not anti-environment. Karen is a fifth-generation farmer who says if they didn't care about their environment, they would have been out of, farming 4 years ago, 4 generations ago. So.
That's right. And we have a great record. Our farmers work with conservation groups. And really, conservation funding right now is almost the new so-called subsidy that helps some of these farmers with a new cash flow that they haven't had in the past. So,
well, how is this litigation, really, what's the impact on the ground?
Well, I live in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and in 2001, the farmers there lost their water supply for the first time in 95 years, a water supply that was created for irrigation because of a fish species called the sucker that was listed through these same sorts of actions that the Center for Biological Diversity is pursuing. And what happens there is we lost $200 million of economic activity in 2001.
So when you go to your congressmen and your senators, and what do you tell them, and what are they doing? And is this the only recourse you have besides litigation?
Well, right now, yeah, either pay in the courts or the Congress and the administration can help it with certain policies.
They're
So
trying to get,
are they hearing you?
Well, I think so. With the efforts of Karen and Congressman Lummis in Wyoming, legislation has been introduced to try to curb this and provide more transparency.
Yeah, they're trying to get the legal fees out. If
Right.
the legal fees weren't paid out like this, do you think there'd be as much litigation?
No, and
Here we
the
go.
real,
Yep,
the
that's
real,
the answer. That's the answer right there.
Yeah, and the fact that the federal government is actually paying these folks to litigate and hurt our communities sends a real bad message to young farmers.
Dan Keppen, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your thoughts. Despite the litigation climate in our state, you can keep a good innovator down. You can't, because this is California, without the desire to go green, about really green.
You'll have the algae, and algae's magic. It is the key component of life. It is what life is all about.